Good evening. Welcome to a very quick session in the garage. Some of you might have seen the other day I picked up a whopping great big lump of flint. Normally in Leicestershire you just tend to find tiny little fragments, but I was really chuffed. I found quite a sizable bit, but what was really happy was actually the colour of what was inside. So we had, or you have rather, this white cortex on the outside, and this darker colour in the inside, and it was that dark colour that I noticed. So what I thought we'd do is, well, I had a little play with it the other day, managed to break off a section and rough out, I say rough out, literally rough out a kind of spearhead type thing. I do a lot of Stone Age days for primary schools, so actually having props or things that the kids can get their hands on really useful, which is good for me because I get to do a bit of practicing with my flint knapping, and as we go along, the little bits are getting better and better, and some are still very rough, but being able to put a bit of stone in the kids' hands, it just enhances what we're talking about. So like I say, we picked this bit of flint up. I was beating on a pheasant shoot the other day, and as we were kind of the line was walking through, I saw this just sitting in the mud, and I picked it up, and really powdery cortex on the outside. The cortex, that's that white part on the outside. It's like chalk, and then on the inside you've got this really dark, and that's what I noticed, that dark colour. So what I thought I'd do is see if I can knock a couple more flakes off of it, but as I'm kind of learning this as well, it's really useful. Talking it out kind of reinforces the learning. So what we know so far is you can't just bash any old edge. It needs to be prepared beforehand, and really what we're looking for, got me high tech props here, is some sort of edge. So you see there, we've almost got a bit of a right angle. Now if we apply force this way, what will happen is it creates this bulb or this dome. It's known as the bulb of percussion. So the force starts to spread out. Now depending on how hard and how accurately you hit, it'll spread out and then come back towards the edge, removing this section. The harder you hit it, the wider that bulb comes and the bigger flake you break off. What we need to be really careful of is actually the point of impact. If we come too close to the edge, it'll crumble and break, and if we go too far in, actually the amount of force that you need to apply, it starts to put little micro fractures inside the flint. Now quite often we'll notice, especially around here, like I say, we don't find the big chunks. You'll see smaller chunks that as the fields have been ploughed, tractors sort of clocked it, and it'll have loads of tiny little cracks in it, and as soon as you try and hit it, it'll just shatter into tiny little bits. But what we're going to hopefully try, either with this bit or a similar bit, is so we've got a lovely 90-degree there. If I can apply a bit of force on the top, it should take this face off cleanly, he says. But what we're using as a hammer is quite important. So I've got this, it's quite a smooth, it's a sort of river cobble, but you can see it hasn't been as hard as I was hoping for on some of the other rocks we've gone for. Now, flint is a beast to work with. These tiny little shards, I mean, they're razor sharp. They still use obsidian in plastic surgery, because you can get an obsidian edge down to the point where it is, I mean, we're talking like molecules thick, and or thin, should I say, is that fine So in the plastic surgery, it produces such a fine cut, it minimises the scarring. So we need to be quite conscious of this whilst we're definitely when we're working with groups. I'm such a big hypocrite. I'm sitting here thinking I've got no eye protection. I'm going to start smacking these stones together. But in the real world, working with a group, I'll pop a pair of glasses on here. What we're going to try and do is apply a fair bit of force on the top there. Let's see if I can mark that up. It might help me. So we've got a shelf there, so 90 degree. If I pop a little mark on there, so can you see that? That's what I'm going to aim for, in the hope to take that short little face off. Let's give it a go. Now I might be missing some massive fundamental here, but I'm just trying to marry the hammer and the edge up. A good old scalp and see what happens, shall we? Alright, so what we've done there, we've taken that much off, but what you can see is that bulb of percussion we're talking about, it's not followed round and finished off. It's actually found so the path of least resistance, and it's come away. But okay, what we can do with that, so we can work with it the other way and now start to take this off and try and reduce it and see where we go. Let's do that. I've got that big ugly shelf. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Let's find out. I'll go this way first. Alright, so you can see a couple of impacts there. I've put little stresses in there, so rather than coming out as a clean bulb, we end up with these smaller fragments that I'm dripping all over the floor. What can we do here? Let's try and clean it up. We've got a trusty bin here. Rather than spreading sharp shards everywhere, I'm just going to try and clean these off into the bin. Oh, that was quite a nice bit. Now these little bits that come off, they're not, I mean, I'm not going to do anything with that, but if it produces anything less than a 90 degree or 90 or less, that's sufficient enough for catching a spark with a flint, with a sort of steel rather. Nothing fancy there. There's an old file, sharp edge there. That's sufficient, you know, that'll do the job. It's not waste. We can use a lot of the stuff that we get out of our attempt at making something. It still has a use. Well, there we go. Look at that. That was one of those small shards that came off. That's already an arrow point, isn't it? A little bit of working on there, that could be mounted into the end of a bit of wood, end of a arrow shaft. Minimal work on that required. Let's see if we can go back. Where was that piece I was working? That was it. Because that's got so many little stress lines in there. I'm going to try there. I might get something off of that. I'll give that a quick go. If not, I'm going to try on something a bit bigger and see what we end up with. So right now I've got nothing particularly in mind. I'm not creative enough to pick up a bit of stone and go, oh yeah, I can see something in there. I've got to smack a couple of bits off and go, all right, that's kind of like we did there. That's kind of arrow shaped. I could work with that. Just literally just seen this on the floor. This isn't a plant, but there you go. Another almost. Oh, you can just about see through that. You can see how thin that is. With very little working. There we go. Let's work this down. So, what do you do? So here, what we're going to do is we're going to do something called pressure flaking. So where we've been smacking hit it with confidence. Thanks, Martin. I hit it. I hit it hard. I've got the badge to prove it. All right. So with this little shard here, I'm just going to follow the edge, and what I've got here is a copper tipped nail here, a pressure flaker, and I'm just going to map out the shape of an arrow. And I'll do it down into this leather here and see if I can start to rough out the shape. Now where the edges are, it's like thinner than paper, so very, very quickly you can hear it just sort of grinding away. But in my mind, I know what this arrow wants to look like, kind of arrow shaped. Nope. There's a point starting to form actually, but looking at it, it might be better that way around. So let's see if I can turn this into what I'm doing with this is line the tip of the pressure flaker up on the edge of the stone and pushing down, and it's still that same idea, that bulb of percussion. It's pushing away a little fragment to make a sharpened edge. I'm taking a little bit more off there than I wanted to, but what we can do, flip it over on the other side and do the same. And now we're starting to get the look. We can make that out. So it's serrated edge there. Yeah, I can just about make that out against my bald head. So a little bit of finagling, a little bit of play, and we're starting to get something that kind of looks, resembles what we want. Problem with working with the really thin shards is a bit too much pressure and it'll break. Well, that's what we were going for. Unfortunately, we just broke the corner off there. You can see I was just starting to put some little grooves in for lashing it onto the arrow shaft. Like I say, I'm at the start of my journey. I'm just having a play with it, and you know, every failure is a lesson. Lesson here: don't start with stuff that's too thin. I mean, God, look at that. Would have been a lovely edge of a arrow shaft had that bit not broken off. Yeah, I'm not going to bin that. We'll still. Yeah, like mine says, that would still work. That would still stick in something, wouldn't it? But when you look at something that size off of the raw material, I've definitely got a bit spare to work with. Yeah, over the next couple of weeks, there's a nice drawing, and the evenings get colder. I've got plenty to play with, and maybe I'll be able to come up with something a little bit more fancy than that. But yeah, cheers. Just a quick view onto my journey so far. But yeah, cheers for watching. Hope you've all had a good weekend. We'll catch up soon. Take care.